if we could bring awareness to your community through growing your business through M&A could lead to your bigger legacy? Good morning. I'd like to welcome Ryan Goral. He is the founder of the G-Spire Group, a company focused on helping entrepreneurs, executives, and small business owners acquire companies. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure today. And how is it in Boston, Massachusetts?
It's beautiful. Fall is here. The leaves are changing, and it's just a beautiful time of the year to be out.
Lovely. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's just jump right on in. So, what makes this work interesting? And what made you also interested in this type of work?
Yeah, I mean the work that I do, I essentially help companies grow through acquisitions, and there's a lot of what I really love about that work. But what makes it impactful is the lives of the business owners that I'm working with. How transformative growing your business through a merger and acquisition can be for their business, their life, their family life, their legacy. It's just it can be a pretty impactful event or events if there's multiple to their lives, and that's
Yes.
what gets me up every day.
Yeah. Okay. So it's impacting other people's lives.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Fascinating. Did you have any mentors in this area, or was it just something you came across during college?
The previous career, I've been in M&A most of my career, but the last few jobs or what have you was lending. So I was on the banking side of lending into mergers and acquisitions. And what I saw was more and more times the buyer, or the borrower in this case, was looking to grow through an acquisition. And you look at the seller of the business, and they've got an army of advisors. They've got the exit planning person, they've got a lawyer, they got their CPA, they got a broker, an investment banker, got a whole team of people. And then you've got this small lower middle market business owner who's never done a transaction of substance before, still running a decently sized $10 to $15 million revenue business, and they're trying to pull off an efficient, well-documented, well-due diligence deal. And I just saw that there wasn't resources around that business owner, and
To help support them.
to support them, to help them make the transaction successful and profitable for them. So the idea came to launch G-Spire Group to come in there and help these buyers go through the process and lower the risk of the transaction.
That's wonderful. So, in understanding a little bit more about what you do, tell me about the benefits to all parties. And especially, I just want to bring up in today's economic conditions. And I know there can be a lot of transition, especially if there's a founder of a family business that might be selling. But tell me from your perspective, what are some of the benefits to all the parties at the table, as well as society?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. I'll do my best, but I think from my client's perspective, the buyers, we can start there. The benefits of this work are, there's a number of different really value props, if that's the right word, and that is, growing your business through an acquisition can lead to a more valuable business. So I use an example. Let's say you're running a $10 million revenue business, and it's doing $1 million of cash flow. That business is probably worth $4-5 million. So give it a 4 to 5 multiple on cash flow for a valuation mark. So if I can help take that $10 million revenue business to a $20 million revenue business through 1 or 2 acquisitions, and that cash flow up to $2 million, all of a sudden that value of that business isn't 4 to 5 times multiple of cash flow. It inches up to maybe 6 or 7. So there's a value creation in just getting a business to be bigger. The other thing that I love personally about the work I do is a lot of times the owner operators that I'm working with, they are working 80, 90 hours a week. They're in their business, putting out fires, dealing with challenges, and they're burnt out. They've got a nice business though, and they're making good money, but they're burnt out, and they've been doing it for a long time. So one thing that we talk about a lot is growing through an acquisition and transforming that business owner into a executive or a CEO. And that transformation is a lifestyle change. Instead of working 80 to 90 hours a week in your business, we, through some organizational design and some things that we can do through an acquisition, get them out of the weeds, hire a COO or a GM, and that allows them to spend more time on strategic initiatives, more time on the golf course if that's the thing, or time with your family. And just there's a lifestyle improvement for the buyer.
Yeah.
On the seller side, because I think you said both parties, the sellers benefit from this transaction, and that's pretty clear. There's a liquidity event that happens. They've worked hard to build this business. They're ready to sell. There's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But more importantly, your podcast around legacy is important in this topic, because a lot of the discussions that I'm working with my buyers is around their legacy, but it's also preserving the legacy of the sellers. They've built this brand. They've spent 30 years building this business. And when they don't just want to sell to somebody that's going to trash the brand and fire all their employees or treat their customers poorly. So legacy and preserving legacy is a pretty common topic that's on the table that gets discussed between both parties.
Yeah, can I intrude for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just smiling from ear to ear because I'm working on a book right now. And the gist of it is everything the business owner needs to know before he or she sells their business, because the moment they sell, they could find themselves with a financial windfall and in a place of, wow, I haven't been, right? They go from working 80 hours a week or 60 hours to all of a sudden now, what do they do? And who and how are they prepared for that? But yeah, and absolutely, I just want to echo what you shared, that and in our preamble, I mentioned that I've worked a decade ago with sellers that included their business, and they want to know, will my employees be taken care of? Will my customers be taken care of? I have a reputation in this niche, in this community, and will some new buyer come along and yeah, change all that for the better or for the worse? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's important. And a lot of times the deal structure that I'm recommending to my buyer has those considerations in it. It needs to be for a deal to actually come into fruition. So for example, if the seller maybe just doesn't want to stop working yet, but they want to take some chips off the table and de-risk some of the fact that most of their wealth is tied into the business asset, there's structures and there's ways to come together and do an acquisition where everyone's needs are being met. But it takes focus and deliberation and discipline and having the right conversation at the right time. And that's a lot of the service that I'm bringing to the transaction that benefits both sides.
Yeah. Would you share a couple of success stories?
Yeah, there's been involved with a lot of transactions. I think that some of the most fulfilling ones are when you actually see the magic between the buyer and the seller just come together, where there's like, I understand you, you understand me, we have the same vision, let's go. It doesn't happen on every transaction, and that's okay.
Oh, can I interrupt again on that?
Sure.
Yeah. It's fascinating when there is good energy, it just makes the transaction work. But if there's one party that has like bad juju or bad mojo, it's like so for some reason the deal can just crumble.
It can. I mean, that's what makes this work challenging, because there's a lot of variables that
Nuances.
if you're not staying on top of the various variables, any one of them can completely derail the deal. It's absolutely true. And personality and core values and culture, as common as those words are thrown around these days, it's as I get older and the more times I'm in the chair of helping buyers buy and transact, the more I just see that it's so important to have those things really dialed in and make sure that the company you're buying has the similar culture and core values and energy. I mean, that is important. It really is important. So, and then the other side of it, the coin is, if there isn't, let's say you're a company, you've got all these core values and culture, and you feel like it's rock solid, and you find a company that maybe doesn't have as good of a culture, as good of, some of the mechanics, there's probably reason to pause because you want to mesh them. But if you can see a bridge of how you can improve it and get buy-in from the employees and the management teams and the customers and all of that, then there's really opportunity to build a much more special combined company. And that's just part of the process.
That's wonderful. Any other success stories?
Um, I think a successful transaction, is a success, and I've had a host of those. I think I did 5 transactions in the last 12 to 18 months. So that's, I think those are just success, just pointing to those.
Okay.
I think to add to just seeing the magic happen, I think, I call them successes, is when I see a owner, and this was a company in Denver that I helped, when you see the integration go smoothly, just like you mapped it out in due diligence, and you see, here's all the holes, here's all the risks. Did we gut check all the assumptions? And then we build out this integration plan, and then to see it actually happen the way you really planned it to happen. That to me is a success. You planned for it, you thought through the risks, and you managed the entire process, both good and bad, in a way that you were prepared for. That was a deal that we just got done this summer, and the integration's going smoothly, and they're already looking for maybe another acquisition, and that type of success.
That's momentum right there.
It's why I do this work. It really is.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight again what you had mentioned about managing the transaction, because it's not always like a 3-week process. Sometimes it can be 1.5 years. Sometimes it can be 3 to 6 months if you're lucky. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And also, I think in previous podcasts, you've mentioned about helping buyers with their due diligence packages for the lenders and the investors, whether that's public or private money. So here's my next question for you. Where do you see the markets heading?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? Well, I think what I'm seeing out in the market, in the M&A space, is deals are still getting done. They're just taking a little longer to get done. So there's still activity. There's still appetite to grow through acquisitions. They're taking longer because we're in a unique economic situation, right? So we've had this long bull run, had this COVID impact, and then you've had companies come out of it as worse companies, and they really damaged them. Some companies benefited from it, and everything in between. And now we're inching into what potentially looks like a recession. So when you're looking at a company who's operated over the last 3, 4, 5 years with all of the noise, and then you're trying to say, what is this thing going to go do the next 3 to 5? It's challenging to align kind of history and projections. And that's really the game of M&A, is pairing that story and making sure you understand it and you have your arms around it. So it makes it more challenging, but it takes more time because they're doing more due diligence. They're doing more assumption pressing. It's just taking longer because they have to look at the details in a little bit more intensely. And that's just the nature of where we're at in the economy. And, if I had a crystal ball to say, is this recession going to be a soft landing or a hard landing? I wish I was, that, I wish I had that futuristic ability to
Intuitive
look
fortune telling.
into fortune telling is really what that would be. Um, I don't know. I wish I did, but what I do with my clients, and I think is prudent to talk about here, with that question is, I've always kind of preached prepare for the worst, and plan for the, have a plan for the best and worst case scenarios, hope for the best, plan for the worst type of concept. That's in everything we do, whether it's business or, financial or otherwise, having the financial model that kind of covers, here's what this could look like if it's a soft landing. Okay. And here's what we would do. Here's what happens if this thing's a train wreck and it's hard and it's the hard landing. What would we do to make sure that the business and things continue to survive? And just having a model that operates on both of those scenarios, I think is a prudent practice. But I don't know where just like I think some of the smartest people in the world may not know where this thing is going. But
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to echo something you had shared about how important it is to have an advisor then with that principal, because there's so many things that that principal has to keep on their radar, and they might not see 100 blind spots. And if they can have an advisor walking next to them, whether it's a legacy advisor or a merger and acquisitions advisor, I'm just going to make that plug right here and now. It's so much more beneficial for them because, I think I heard this phrase the other day. It's like if you want to go far, go with a team, but if you want to go fast, go alone.
yeah,
And so absolutely, I think this knowledge that you're bringing to any of your clients can only help them build better, and also just understand what their options are and what they can do with their time, their money, their resources, their talent, even the skill sets that they can bring to the table. I know in one of the podcasts before, you had mentioned that with buyers, sometimes it's interesting when they're trying to get financing with banks, because the banks won't lend on projections, they'll lend on past performance. And so in the buyer's mind, they could say, but I'm going to bring so many good things to this business and I just know it. And yet the bank's like, well, are we going to lend on, an idea, on hope? I mean, what say you?
yeah, it's the third party advisor. What I love about what you said there is, and some of the best feedback I've gotten from prior clients is, yeah, I mean, I'm giving, I think, sound good advice, but oftentimes there's value in just having a third party listen and provide some feedback, good or bad. And having a sounding board can be just as equally as important and valuable than the technical advice that, whether you're talking, valuations and multiples and discounted cash flow and all the technical stuff, having a third party just gut check assumptions and, complain about XYZ, I think is proven to be just as valuable as the technical expertise. So I agree with you there. And
Because we
but
fall into patterns. Go ahead.
no, you're exactly right. It's exactly where I was going. It's, I hire an executive coach for the same purpose. Like I want him to knock me down when he sees me making an assumption, to make sure I'm thinking about things in the correct. Might not change the outcome of where we're going, but at least it's being thought through and other paths considered. It's that third party advisor.
Yeah, and that person is telling you some new information, and because I think oftentimes, especially when it comes to success and successful people, one of the dangers is, what if we're surrounded by a bunch of yes men and yes women? Who's there that's going to say, like there's a blind spot, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before I ask you about the origin of the company name, what are a few tips you might be willing? And I know this is kind of putting you on the spot, about some tips about what a buyer or a seller should know that could easily be presumed.
Yeah, so I'll start with the buyers because that's really my focus, my customer base. Things that I commonly are talking to them about, I guess, would be a good place to start. Um, you know, when you're thinking about growing through an acquisition, it's super important that you have the strategy and the vision of where you're trying to take your company kind of flushed out. I think too often, I use the word why a lot, and to uncover this exact kind of line of thinking, because saying that you went out and made an acquisition sounds nice and sexy at the country club, and it's a lot of people are talking about it, and it sounds fun and all that stuff. But just making acquisitions for the sake of making acquisitions is taking on undue risk. And you have to kind of gut check why you're doing what you're doing, and making sure that it fits with the vision of where you're trying to go. So that's one thing that commonly comes up, and not everyone's just being flippant and trying to go buy a bunch of companies for no reason, but it is,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, but I just want to intrude for a moment. But one of the most dangerous things is if a buyer has more money than the know-how of what to do with that money, and they could make one purchase and find themselves at a significant loss if they don't know the industry that they're walking into. In other words, if they leap before looking.
it, it's a good example. You got to kind of understand the core strategy around anytime you put your money out there to buy a business, and if it doesn't fit in your vision, the question is why do we really want to do this? And so that would be one of the things I'm commonly talking to my buyers about, that might be presumed.
Because they
And
sold me on the ROI, Ryan.
yes, exactly. um and then from if I'm working with a company that, a lot of, I don't do sell side work necessarily, it's not the niche I'm in, but I often been talking to my clients about prepping to sell, and usually using acquisitions as a strategy to do that. And when I shift into that prep to sell discussion, I think one of the things, legacy is one of them. It's, let's start talking about what you want to leave behind. What is it that's important to you? What is the financial dollar amount that we're looking to obtain after taxes, et cetera? So
EBITDA.
there's the prep work that goes into the sales side that, oftentimes isn't thought through, and that's where you need tax advisors and wealth advisors, and you need people around you to kind of talk about all the different impacts that are going to result in that dollar amount that's landed in your checking account when you sell, which
And
is only
also
one
what
part
you'll
of the
do with your
equation.
time afterwards. Go
There's
ahead.
Yes, exactly. That is a little bit outside of my expertise. I'll refer that discussion out, but prepping them to sell, it's just as important to talk through, starting with the end in mind. What is this going to look like when you sell? What's that dollar amount? Have you considered taxes, like what this is going to look like on a tax basis? So there's a lot that goes into that it's not just a matter of maximizing the sale, which is important, but there's things that you need to do to maximize that dollar amount, and there's things that can be done today that you can do to control that. I think too often people they push hard and grow and just assume that it's all going to magically take place, and that just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's interesting when somebody does sell, it's like a different chapter of their life and it's different skills that are required. And sometimes they can feel like, but I was so good at my business. And now it's like I feel like I'm getting humbled.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me about the origin of the company and its connection to your days in the sports arena, whether it was baseball or basketball.
Yeah, G-Spire Group is a play on my last name was Gorrell, and my friends in college and my teammates, I played basketball in college. They would call me G. It just was a short way of calling my name. It just turned into a nickname, and kind of stuck. So people call me G. And so that people, that's just kind of the brand of me, I guess. And then Spire came from when I was kind of thinking through the type of work I'm doing with my firm. It's all about growth, and it's also about inspiring that growth. And so I kind of put G Inspire together, and that was the origin of the name.
It's lovely. It's lovely. And so, speaking about inspiration, tell me about a couple of your core values.
Yeah, I've got a handful of them. I think there's I operate. I think most people will know this about me. Integrity is a huge core value of mine. Integrity and character. Um, I think I had a wise back in my DU days. The chancellor
At
there,
Denver University. Yes.
University of Denver. Yeah, he. I remember him talking to us when I was younger, and he had said something that always stuck to me, and that was someone asked him why he had been so successful in his career, and he goes something to the effect of, I always did what was right, even if it lost me millions of dollars. I always did what was right, and that kind of stuck to me, and I've adopted that philosophy as part of my core values because I've seen the power of it. um, so integrity and character is definitely one. The other one that is a newer one. So I'll give you the old one, I'll give you a new one, and I think that'll bridge it. Is the concept of having a foxhole mentality. It's a little unique, but a lot of the work that I do, and it's my personality, is taking a foxhole mentality with my clients, which is when you're under fire, who do you want in your foxhole fighting alongside you? And I want people to remember me as, I just want to, I'm glad Ryan was there. We were taking fire, we had to duck into a foxhole. He advised, he consulted, he really helped me through the dangers of all of the battle. And I take that seriously. I look at partnering with my clients very seriously and take the relationship very seriously. And the foxhole mentality is another core value of mine.
That's lovely. And absolutely, I think the commercial landscape is oftentimes a battlefield, and we're not ready until we get shot at a few times.
That's right.
But I'm up. So, since this is a legacy podcast, what does this word mean to you? And what would you like your legacy to be?
And the word's loaded for me, and I could probably talk about legacy for hours, but I won't to spare your listeners. But for me, my legacy is really centered on my family, and I want my name, Gorrell name, and what I did in the business community, but also in my personal community and family community, to last as long as possible, and be a beacon of a light that inspires my grandkids and other people in the community's kids, to work hard, do the right thing, live with integrity. Some of these core value things I want to live on. And so a lot of the work of launching this firm, having a piece of my name is part of it. Had a legacy thought process that went into it. And the work that I do is helping companies grow and make legacies for my clients. So there's so much that intertwines there that is pretty exciting, and it really gets me excited to get up every day to make that happen for both my clients, but what that end result will be for my legacy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for speaking into that. I think one of the reasons that I love to invite new guests onto this platform is because there's so many different perspectives on how somebody personally sees that word, and also what it is that they would like to design. Because it's almost like the creation of an artist, and each artist is going to have a different sculpture, and so it's unique to them, their history, their fingerprints, their values. Yeah. So speaking of positive role models, who inspired you?
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind is, I grew up playing basketball, and it was during the Bulls era. So, clearly Jordan was a role model. As I was a young, passionate basketball player. So I point to him. And then on the business side, I kind of grew up in this Warren Buffett value investing. Um, and I think the way he carried himself through his career in this calm, wise approach, just there's something to that has stuck with me. The not just chasing trends, thinking through things deliberately, investing when the time is right. That type of professional approach, has always kind of stuck to me. So those are two that, there's a lot. I'm inspired by, really a lot of the people I meet every day, and it's the list is long. But as a young kid growing up, I think those are a couple foundational role models that I had.
That's lovely. Thank you for speaking into that. And again, I just emphasize that question because I think our human mind can look to the glass being half full or half empty. And I think when we reflect on those that have gone before us and have made some great decisions and have been very intentional about how they formed their life, their business decisions, and all of it, it can be kind of an upward spiral of momentum. So
Right.
before I close this out with my closing paragraph, is there anything else you would like to share with the listening or the viewing audience, whether it's your website or a call to action?
Sure. So my website's easy. It's just www.gspiregroup.com. You can find my email there if there was want to connect. I'm pretty accessible. I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn, so I'm out there. So if anybody's interested in having some capacity and some M&A expertise as part of their management teams to help them grow their business, always open to a conversation. But my last, parting thought, that's how you can get a hold of me. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is I really don't want business owners feeling like they're doing this alone, because it is a pretty lonely place to be. And there's resources and there's advisors who love helping companies and business owners and leaders in a lot of different facets. So you don't have to do it alone. And I think that would be my parting thought.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I also just want to kind of second the motion of what you shared because absolutely, I think many owners find themselves almost living in like what feels like their own silo, and who can they talk to about it? Yeah, you're smiling because you know how much of a reality that is.
Yep.
Yeah, especially if they're fending off battles from employees and customers, and they've got to take care of business licensing to cover all the state and the county and the city and this and the that. And it's just,
It is. And then you think about it, there's a lot of these um so there's the things that happen in the business that clearly you have a team you could talk to, but it's that extra layer. There's some things you can't talk to your team about. There's some things you can't talk to your friends about. There's some things you can't talk to so you don't really want to talk to your wife or your family about for a host of reasons. So there's, you know, when it comes to, the emotional side of leadership, like, where's a safe place to have a conversation that, you feel like you can, offload it and have someone to kind of talk through certain things. I think that's why you see a lot of advisors, consultants, coaches. You see a lot more of these peer groups, the Vistages and the EOs of the world that create the space for these CEOs, because it is a lonely spot to be a lot of times.
yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Ryan, for speaking into what it is that you bring and how you're going to be in service to the community and society, but also that you're living your life through your values of integrity, character, as well as the foxhole mentality in intentionally designing your legacy because it doesn't happen just by accident. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to read out the closing paragraph real quick. So, in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess to the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder to Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you for joining us today. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to rate and review. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Ryan, for speaking into your legacy.